Hey, what's up, YouTube friends and family? It's Cousin Ryan, and I've got a discussion for us today. It seems the debate about the ECTO-1 and ECTO-1A is heating up online, and I just wanted to chime in with my own opinion. Ryder and I had a conversation about this the other day over the phone, and I thought it was time to make a video and talk about this. So the debate being the ECTO-1 and the ECTO-1A in canon, movie canon, are they the same car with the ECTO-1A being just an upgrade of the ECTO-1? Or are they two separate cars with the ECTO-1A being a separately purchased vehicle in Ghostbusters 2? My opinion, when I saw Ghostbusters 2 in the theater for the first time as a kid, I thought this was just an upgrade of the ECTO-1. But I had an experience later on that same year that kind of changed my opinion, and I've held on to that ever since. So, let's talk about it.
Shut up! You don't think Ryan is famous?
Cousin Ryan.
You gotta...
Okay, so as I had mentioned, with Afterlife approaching next year, it seems like this debate is increasing a little more online. Again, it's been revived. I just want to start off with, there is a very toxic, undesirable element amongst the Ghostbusters fans that I really do not want to be a part of. That's not my thing. But there are several people in the forums and on social media that try to profess their opinion like they're some all-knowing wizard of the Ghostbuster world. I'm going to call BS on that. As soon as you start bringing up Occam's razor as a reason for the Ectomobile being the same car, no, you're being pretentious. Knock it off. And to that, I will give you this face. And really, unless your name is Ivan or Jason Reitman, you just have an opinion just like me. You don't know any more or less than I do. So that's how we're going to approach this conversation today. We don't know. We don't. There's no empirical evidence out there. Except, I will bring up Ivan Reitman saying that the video game, is no longer considered canon in the movie universe. So I'm not going to include that in this discussion today. But, with that being said, when Afterlife comes out and I find out I'm right, hey, no, I told you so. We'll just let it go. But if I'm wrong, I'll go to jail peacefully, quietly. I'll enjoy it. But until then, let's get this conversation going. Okay, so the last time we saw the ECTO-1 was at the beginning of Ghostbusters 2, running rough, needing some work, totally in disrepair, maybe even needed to be replaced. Now, one of the arguments I hear often for the two cars being the same vehicle is that, well, they wouldn't have gone out and got another 1959 Cadillac ambulance because those are too rare, they're too expensive, they're too blah, 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 whatever. I disagree. If you have an old car, generally you have a parts car to help you restore your old vehicle, or you have access to one, or you've had somebody offer you one saying, hey, make me an offer if you need another one, whatever. So I don't buy that. It's also, the 80s were like 30 some years ago now. So the car was 30 years less rare back then, and it's only really made significant by these movies. Just like the DeLorean would be another car, failed car venture by John DeLorean, had Back to the Future not made those cars famous. And I think brand recognition would be important for them to want to go out and buy or get their hands on another Cadillac if they were going to have two vehicles. It's a very iconic look to their business, and I think they would want to maintain that recognizability. Is that a real word? Sure. Okay, I want to talk about a couple books here. I've got the children's novelization for Ghostbusters 2, and I've also got the compilation of the Ghostbusters 1 and 2 novelizations here. I think these are important because generally these are written off of the original script before edits and things are made and scenes are deleted for pacing and you know, runtime of the film. So I think this is a good window into original intent of stories before, again, choices are made for theatrical releases. So, and it provides more material for us nerds to talk about, which is awesome. So, in the children's novelization on page 34, right next to a sweet picture of the ECTO-1A pulling out of the firehouse, it says at the top, they opened up shop at the old firehouse again, and they spent their first earnings on a brand new Ectomobile, ECTO-1A. So there in the children's novelization, the ECTO-1A is a separate vehicle. Now in the movie novelization, the original novelization for Ghostbusters 2, page 269, chapter 15, it says, the garage door to the Ghostbuster Firehouse headquarters rumbled upward, and the team's newly purchased and refurbished ambulance, the Ecto-1A, zoomed out onto the street. So in the original movie novelization, it also says that it is a newly purchased vehicle. I want to bring in one more book. Actually, before I bring that book in, I also want to re-emphasize the importance of deleted scenes. I don't know if you guys have ever picked up any of the novelizations for the Star Wars movies, but there is a scene in Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, where Yoda is just staring off into space, and it just seems like he's staring off into space, and then someone comes in and says, hey, we found General Kenobi, blah, 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 and they decide what to do with the twins. In the novelization, okay, on towards the beginning of chapter 21, page 441, it starts a sequence explaining how Qui-Gon taught Yoda to communicate from the other side of the Force. Huge, vital information. Yoda wasn't staring off into space. He was communing with Qui-Gon, and that got deleted from the movie. So books do have vital information that get left out for whatever reason, George Lucas. Anyway, I wanted to also talk about the Haynes Manual as well, because in it, it does say, admittedly, that the Ecto-1 is, or excuse me, the Ecto-1A is a revamped version of the Ecto-1. Did I say that right? The Ecto-1A is a revamped version of the Ecto-1. Let's see. During the process, new functionality was added to bring this classic car into the digital age. In the very last line, it says, Dr. Stantz and Spengler decided to rechristen the car with a brand new designation, the Ecto-1A. Now, I really enjoy this book. It's got some great information in it, but I'm going to pull a geek card on this one. If this were a Haynes manual, a genuine Haynes manual for ghostbusting, it would not include the reboot, because those are from two separate universes, and you would not have a book from two separate universes. Again, no knocks on this. This is an officially licensed book. However, this is, very recent, within the last couple of years. Yeah, 2017. Great book, great detail, but it feels like trying to retcon something here from somebody's own opinion. I don't know, just my opinion. I feel like these carry more weight than this does, because this was from back then, and this is something newer. It includes the reboot. I'm going to discredit it because it includes the reboot. Sorry, that's just, again, my opinion. Okay, so we've discussed this aspect before in another video on our channel. The original intent for the Ecto-1A being the Ecto-2. And in this scene where Bill Murray goes out to hail a taxi cab for his date with Dana, the Ecto-1A pulls up with the Ghostbusters in it, and lo and behold, what is the plate on the front of the car? That's right, it says the Ecto-2. Originally, this was supposed to be the Ecto-2. Now, I guess you could make the argument, well, it's Ghostbusters 2, let's make it the Ecto-2, just like the two-finger sign on the door. I don't know. I mean, I really feel like if you wanted to make it a different car, you would change the license plate. If you wanted it to be known that it's the same car, you leave the license plate alone. That's just my opinion. The reason they didn't roll with the Ecto-2 license plate is they were afraid that it would confuse kids, because, as we all remember, if we're fans of the original cartoon, The Real Ghostbusters, the Ecto-2 is the helicopter. And I believe that is the reason they decided to opt for the 1A rather than the Ecto-2, was to avoid any confusion for the kids. Okay, so now I want to talk about an experience that changed my mind about the Ecto-1, Ecto-1A debate. Again, as a kid seeing Ghostbusters 2 in the theater for the first time, I just assumed that the 1A was a sweet, sweet upgrade of the Ecto-1. But later on that year, in the fall of 1989, we went to Marine World Africa, USA in Vallejo, California to meet the Ghostbusters. And I'm sure if you've been a Ghostbuster fan for any amount of time, you're familiar with the name Peter Mosen, who would go and do these public appearances sanctioned by the studio as Ray Stantz. He would show up with his proton pack, his jumpsuit, equipment. Stay Puft was there, and the car. I'm not going to say which car yet, but just a quick piece of trivia. Peter Mosen made a cameo in the background of the scene where the Ghostbusters go in and interrupt Dana and Peter's dinner, and Ray says, the slime's all the way at the it goes all the way to the museum, and flings slime across the room. The gentleman and his date that get hit with the slime, that's Peter Mosen. He had a little cameo in there, which was kind of cool. But anyway, he would do these public appearances and bring the Ecto-1. And I remember as a kid going to Marine World to meet them, thinking I was going to see the 1A and seeing the Ecto-1. Not going to lie, I was excited, but still a little bit disappointed because I wanted to see the Ecto-1A. And I went up to him and I said, "Excuse me, Dr. Stantz, how come you don't have the Ecto, like, what's up? Where's the Ecto-1A?" And he said, and I quote, "We had to leave the Ecto-1A in New York for Winston and Egon to use while we're out doing this tour." Boom. There you go. I'm not saying that's canon. Now, hold on. I'm not saying that's canon or anything, but clearly these sanctioned appearances had a list of responses to questions. So, to me, in my mind, when I heard that as a little kid, for the last, 31 years, it's been two separate cars. Just saying, that's where my perspective now comes from. And that is the event that changed my mind about this. Okay, so this next part, I'm going to put a big spoiler warning up. I'm going to talk about some things that I read about the production. They're not plot points, and I personally don't consider them spoilerish, but I could see how some people might. So I want to warn you right now, I'm going to talk about some things that I read about the production of Ghostbusters Afterlife that you may or may not consider spoilerish, but I'm going to talk about them anyway. You've been warned, so if you don't want to know anything, I'd stop here, and I'll talk to you next time. However, if you are interested, then keep listening. Anyway, there was an article, and I believe it was Hemming Motors, that talked about the original Ecto-1A being refit to the Ecto-1 for the production of Ghostbusters Afterlife. And it, I believe, is the car you see in the trailer is the actual Ecto-1A from Ghostbusters 2. Now, this doesn't mean that it was refit to the Ecto-1 because that's canon. It's just these cars are in limited supply nowadays, and they needed a couple extras for filming this movie. And the original Ecto-1 is fully restored for God knows how many hundreds of thousands of dollars and is sitting on Sony's lot, so I understand wanting to leave that one alone in its pristine condition. Now, in this article that I read that talked about this, I believe the person from the studio said all of the equipment from the Ecto-1A has been put into storage and kept for future use. That article's gone now, and I don't know if they were, if Hemming Motors was told, hey, you need to take this down or whatever, but to me, I got the feeling like we may have not seen the last of the Ecto-1A. Maybe not in Ghostbusters Afterlife, but in the future. I wish I could link that article, but like I said, it's gone. It was on Hemming Motors, and it really gave me the feeling like, okay, we might see the Ecto-1A again, and I hope we do. Now, I just don't see in Ghostbusters Afterlife how the Ecto-1 is put back exactly like it was seen, at the end of Ghostbusters 1. Again, you've seen in the trailer, the ladder's been moved to the other side, there's a gunner seat, blah, 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 that didn't exist in Ghostbusters 1. However, everything else, right down to the front license plate, looks the same as it did in Ghostbusters 1. Now, I don't see the Ghostbusters having that much nostalgia in them to want to revert their car back to its former glory. I would see them kind of leaving, upgrading pieces. Again, even in this, they said that they upgraded and brought things into the digital age. Why would you retroactively remove the updated, more current, modern equipment to go back to some of the archaic stuff they had in the first movie? Just doesn't quite make sense. I believe this car was put in storage in Afterlife, left in that barn, and they still had this one active in New York. Maybe it's still sitting in the firehouse. I don't know. But again, this is just me working through this. To me, it doesn't make sense to take everything off. I could see them, changing the logo back to the original logo after the kind of the promotion of returning to business was over. But, no caution stripes, no anything. It definitely looks super cool. I love seeing the Ecto-1 neglected like that. I know it's a little counterintuitive, but I think it looks super, super cool. But it also leads me to believe it is the Ecto-1 and not the Ecto-1A returned to Ecto-1 form. That's how I see it. I just don't see them having that type of nostalgia in them. Again, Like I said, if they were going to revert it back or remove some of the equipment after their Battle of Vigo or whatever, there would still be some elements of the 1A left on here, and there's not. There isn't one trace of the ECTO-1A anywhere on the car we see in the trailer for Ghostbusters Afterlife. Okay, so if it wasn't completely obvious from the tone of this video, yes, I personally believe these to be two separate vehicles in Canon. It just doesn't make sense to me for them to be the same vehicle, and I feel like you have to suspend more disbelief in order for them to not be two separate vehicles. But let me know down in the comments what you think, and you know what, understand, we don't have empirical evidence to answer this question yet. It's all opinions. You don't have the answer, I don't have the answer. Hopefully when Afterlife comes out, we'll know, or if Jason or Ivan Reitman say, hey, these are one vehicle, I'll admit that I was wrong. Or if they say, hey, they're both vehicles, I'll be like, I thought so. But until then, thank you so much for hanging out with me today and nerding out. I love these geek, discussions and things. And until next time.
This is Peter Venkman saying, see you then.
You know, sir, it's cousin Ryan on the Hollywood Boulevard. You know, sir, he bigger than any superstar. Oliver Smith is some real dope bar. Some them sweeter than any chocolate bar. Boom!
Hey.